This is Salisbury Fire Department's training minutes.
David Haynes, training captain for the Salisbury Fire Department. Continuing on with our hydraulic series of training minute videos, we're going to be talking about determining the pump discharge pressure for the 2.5-inch attack line on Salisbury's engines. And we're going to be using the Q-squared method, the hand method, to determine the friction loss in the 2.5-inch hose with a conversion factor of ×2. So the first thing that we want to do, we use our pump discharge pressure formula that we see above here, and we want to account for all four elements that we would have in the attack line. So in this case, being an attack line, the first element is going to be a nozzle pressure. The second element is going to be the friction loss on the hose line itself. We would have any devices in the line, we would account for those. And if there were any elevation changes up or down, we would account for those through the head pressure. So as good driver operators using that formula, we're going to account for all four elements. We know in the example that we have here below, there are no devices and there are no elevation changes. If there were, we would account for them. We're going to, as a memory jogger, account for them now by putting a 0 up there where they go. That leaves the remaining two elements of the nozzle pressure and the friction loss. In determining the friction loss in our hose line, we're going to want to know the three elements here: the flow, the size, and the length. So on Salisbury's engines, the 2.5-inch attack line, 2.5-inch hose, is 250 feet long, and then the nozzle that's on that line is a solid stream nozzle with an 1 1/8 tip. So in determining the flow, we know that at the nozzle pressure of 50 pounds, that 1 1/8 tip will flow approximately 266 gallons per minute. So our flow that we will use for today's calculation will be 250 gallons a minute. So we'll make the notes up there for all of those. $250 gallons a minute, 2.5-inch hose, 250 feet long. And that bears in line with our estimation with our nozzles. Like I said, we know the solid stream is 1 1/8 tip. At 50 pounds is 266 gallons a minute. So 250 gallons a minute is a good estimation. And then we have a fog nozzle attachment for that. We can spin the stack tip off and put the fog on there. And at 100 pounds, that is rated at 250 gallons a minute. So either nozzle that we would have on that line, that estimation will work. So flow of 250 gallons a minute, size and length, we've all accounted for. The Q-squared formula ×2. So we're going to start up here with our gallon per minute. And then our length, we'll make a note right here. The first thing that we will do, take the flow and the length. And they both are 250 gallons a minute, 250 feet length. In the case of the gallon per minute, using the hand method, the Q-squared, what we would try to do is, using our hand method, 100, 200, 300, 400, 500 gallons a minute, 200 and 300. If it was an even number, such as 200 or 300, we would simply Q-squared or multiply the first number by itself after dividing by 100. So 200 gallons a minute will be 2 × 2, 300 gallons a minute will be 3 × 3. In the case of an in-between number like this, 250 gallons a minute, when you come across with the hand method, 200, 300, 250 falls in the middle, we're going to end up cross multiplying between the two. So 250, 2 × 3 will give you 6. So that very first number that we come up with, either by dividing by 100 and Q-squared, or the cross multiplying method, as we had to do here, gives me that number, which is 6, which is our 3-inch hose method, which is what the Q-squared always starts with. The conversion factor for 2.5-inch hose is to take that number ×2. So 6 × 2, over here for the conversion factor, will be 12. And what that is telling me is that for every 100 feet of 2.5-inch hose flowing 250 gallons a minute, there's going to be approximately 12 pounds of friction loss. So the next thing we do, we've accounted for the flow, we've accounted for the size of the hose using the Q-squared conversion factor ×2 to get 12, and then we're going to account for the length. So 250 feet, we're going to take that number, divide by 100, and then we're going to take the friction loss per 100 feet and multiply times the length of hose divided by 100, and we should end up with 30. So the friction loss in the 2.5-inch attack line on Salisbury's engines flowing 250 gallons a minute is going to be 30 pounds, and that's the total friction loss from the discharge to the nozzle. No other factors in there, no devices, no head pressure. We can go ahead and put the friction loss up here in our formula, 30 pounds. And then we'll account for the nozzle pressure. We know that that is a solid stream nozzle. So a solid stream handline nozzle designed to have 50 pounds of pressure. So we'll put that up here under nozzle pressure. Now that we've accounted for all the elements, we'll go ahead and add them all up. And our pump discharge pressure on the 2.5-inch tack line with the solid stream nozzle flowing 250 gallons a minute is going to be 80 pounds. That's today's training minute. Salisbury Fire Department, 2.5-inch attack line, friction loss. Thank you.
Thank you for watching Salisbury Fire Department's Training Minutes.